another space-time medicine, or what we like to call 5 and 6. I'm your host, Dr. Bay, Dr. Simo Bay. I'm a medical mathematician, author, father, and innovator myself. My role here is to bring you the most fascinating and remarkable human beings in their field or industry, to share content that will really help you navigate this changing world.
Hmm.
So, 5 and 6 is what we want to do with this series is speak about uh, uh, the nexus event, we like to call them, for those who interpret and utilize what we call ancient and current um, abilities, technologies in their work to benefit humanity. And so we'll bring topics that uh, uh, provide a cross dimensional relationship to our main themes. So let's get started. So, with us today, we have Mr. Bavu Blakes. He's a scholar MC, deliberately walking through the intersection of hip hop, education, and spirituality. He's a student of the humanities and of the humane, and an award winning musician whose studio collaborations include Grammy winners such as Adrian Casada, Symbolic One, Gary Clark Jr., and many, many more. So we'd like to welcome Mr. Bavu Blakes today.
Thank you. It's
It's
great
going
to be
up.
here with you.
Audience is going up. Wonderful.
It's great to be here with you, brother.
So good to see you, Bavu. We've known each other for, a few years, several years now.
Hmm.
And, we've been involved in some beautiful events and with our kids, educational wise. Of course, I've seen some of your work on stage. You're well known here in this third coast, this Texas, as we say. Uh, Tell us a little bit about your origin story in regards to where you come from. How did this really begin for you?
I think my parents had a very deliberate role in shaping my identity. So I think my origin story would be their story. Since they grew up on the same block, went K through 12 together.
Wow.
So they were always, you know, deeply connected, siblings, dating siblings and marrying siblings, and just a very close family unit there. And in the early 70s, they advanced to colleges. And at first, my mom went local, which was Southern University in Baton Rouge, where they're from. And my dad went Ivy League initially,
Hmm.
but it wasn't a good cultural fit. And as I recall, they really had to tell that institution about itself in order to move some things forward.
Yeah.
And then after that first year, he was out. And then I'm a Howard baby. So similar to the way that your Blue Ivies and whatever Kanye's kids' names are, they block off whole wings of hospitals.
Yeah.
Well, I came in 2 days after Nona Gay. So there was a
Wow.
lot of attention going to Marvin Gaye's baby girl. And
Beautiful.
and here I am, not the top bill or the greatest star, but a significant force. And so my parents named me Bavu, that early 70s reclaiming of connection to history, anything other than like a, kind of this European stamp, folks really seeking ways to name and claim, as you said, the ancient and current technologies. Is that what you said, brother? Did I get it right?
Yeah, it's that intersection. Yeah.
So I feel like they were at the ancient and current technological intersection of
Right.
identity as it relates to, you know, black folks in the most traditional African American sense in the USA.
Wow.
So most of my life, besides those first 8 years or so in DC, are back closer to home between Texas and Louisiana, um, which traditionally, historically, politically, socially is very distinct. And so, yeah, it's like a child of the bayou with initially, some East Coast and Black liberation and Black arts and lit informed identity and experience prior to landing back
Mhm.
in suburban Dallas as an 8-year old, who knew he could write some stuff. That's my origin story, and I think there's winding tales and lots of sharp pivots
Sure.
in my journey. But when you ask about an origin story, I realize that origin story is, from my perspective, similar to what's going on right now. Just a progression based on that, those kind of core beliefs of about who am I.
Hmm. What is that? Those three questions that we always tend to ask: Who am I? Where am I going? And where do I come from?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
they seem to matriculate as my pop says, just stay alive.
They sound like questions that situate us.
Yeah.
And what does that have to do with healing, Dr. Bay? When when you can situate oneself, what does that have to do with healing, brother?
Being present uh,
Hmm.
allows one to just really become an observer. Nothing to do, just observe, listen, be there, and know that really the secret power I think of humans is really your power of choice.
Mm.
You choose what you want to do in life. Sometimes it may not seem that way, but we've all been there and are always there. So
Hmm.
that's how I would describe that in terms of healing. Um, but back to you, I would say that when we look at that 8-year-old in writing, I think of the god Thoth, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
Thoth, right? Dejante, he goes by many names.
Hmm.
The Ibis with the, of course, quill pen or
Is that
on the
Jehudi as well?
Jehudi as well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how, wow, writing, poetry, spirit, hip hop, education, all really come from the written word, the word, right?
The word.
um, of how wow, the power in that. You've got some freestyling, right? You got some just coming with clarity from whatever dimension they're touching, and they're sharing from that space things that move the heart. Hip hop. I think of a KRS-One. I think of Jay-Z. I think of so many. Uh, for you and being able to use that written word at 8, what did you notice in that origin story to where it's taking you today?
I noticed the power of that choice that you referred to,
Mm-hmm.
and how there's near infinite, if not infinite, choices you can make in terms of creation and birth of the word.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that.
Wow.
So in that sense, it felt powerful, you know, to be a steward of the word. And that's what I noticed right away. And I think when I think about origins, there's always a reference to another text. I mean, at least from my perspective and my experience,
Mm-hmm.
it starts off with mimicking to understand structure and understand, patterns and the ins and outs and ups and downs of this, you know, the word. How can it be designed? There's rhythm and space and all these different sounds and silences and, just so many ways. It brings this book called A Word Collector to mind, where there's this child going through life and he would just play with them and just, see what he could do with them. And that was his passion, his obsession was just the configurations, the mathematics,
Right.
as I heard you refer to earlier. And so that's initially what I appreciated the most was the power and the freedom.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So this intersection of hip hop education and spirituality, which for
Yes.
most of us, it's like we're doing one and the same. We don't really segment. We're
Mm-hmm.
just doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For many minds, right, it has to be segmented in order to understand it or marketed, that type of thing. But in its raw form, it's just one and the same.
That's right.
And
You know that.
you
You
notice
know
the
that.
power. Well,
You know that.
I'm
But
I'm
how do
interviewing.
you know that?
I'm interviewing you, brother.
Yeah, I know, but everybody doesn't know that. You
Yeah.
you get you
Well,
gave them a lot as if it was just regular.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's this understanding of like this rawness, right? That the kids seem to do like it's nothing. It's
Okay. Yeah.
it's whatever we create. You see it on TikTok. You see it on all these. It's like we do it in our sleep, right? It's nothing.
There it is.
I love it.
And that's the spirituality part, I think, is how is it nothing? You know?
Hmm.
Even though I've been able to create and collaborate and whatnot, I can put my name next to hip hop like so many millions of people can.
Yeah.
Um, there's a spirit to that, and of course there's a spirit to me. So there are a lot of intersections and also negotiations, as you move through life, about what angle am I connecting to this from? What point am I entering this from? So I think that's quite intriguing too. Um, so it's powerful.
Moments of clarity as a kid, loss and gain, touching dimensions. We talked a little bit about these,
Hmm.
um, of being able to have like these breakthroughs and just doing what we do. Not a care in the world, no regard to someone else's opinion, right? You think of kids, right? Being able to carry that through your writing sensibilities. Um, what really goes forth to say that statement by KRS? Rap is something you do, hip hop is something you live.
I think in an even broader sense than those beautiful words from KRS, one of my favorites. The best learning is through experience.
Mm-hmm.
So even as you were setting up the question, I just kept thinking about how anytime you're able to kind of do the thing and experience,
Mm-hmm.
feedback and reflection and, doing the thing again and doing the thing again and doing the thing again, whether it's various forms of writing or working or any task or any skill,
Yeah.
planting a tomato to building a stadium, it's the experience
Mm-hmm.
that gives the greatest reward, I think. And you see it permeate so much of culture and society where that hip hop thing when you see it or you taste it or you feel it, especially from our, you know, generational identity, for lack of a better description. The time, I guess, was the time we occupy together. Um, and so that's really powerful to me too. It's just, you know, like you said, it's nothing as if it comes out of nowhere, which tells us it's phenomenal,
Yes.
right? So what is that, But feeling, for me, I remember picking it up as a continuation of who I understood myself to be till that moment. Like, oh, that's us.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever we are, that's ours and that's us. And that's the language. You know? That's the language, that's the sound, that's the move, that's the place. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yes.
How do we know, How do we know? But I knew.
Yeah. It's, as we segue here a little bit into, say, the revelatory capacity. We have this long ancient lineage of, again, these you know like Marvel, like storytelling just in general, but these nexus events, right?
Hmm.
These major turning events that provide civilizations with much more than they may understand in the moment.
Hmm.
But revelations, is a thing in our history, our culture.
Hmm.
we go back 12,000 years. I imagine this scene of a various tribe uh, knows that this meteor is coming, and we've got to make a decision. Who's
Mm-hmm.
going where? Who's going to migrate here? Who's going to migrate here? As America's purported to be over 130,000 years of activity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that revelation of you just got to follow that heart, that DNA. Describe that for me, because I definitely hear that as a signature with the experience that you're talking about, right? Just being able to do the thing, right? Everyone just can't do the thing
Mm-hmm.
on a certain level, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imitation, and that's fine. That's how we learn. But to do the thing where you're speaking to millions and billions, and they get it somehow,
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Yeah, I get a strong sense that I'm doing the thing when I experience a lot of synchronicity.
Yeah, yeah.
This divine coordination well beyond what I was thinking
Mhm.
or dreaming or trying to do. That's always a very strong go ahead for me. Is when I see that alignment that's just so beyond me. Um, so that comes to mind, and then also anytime there's like a pivot that's also almost like a fear-inducing pivot, like
Mm.
I am a journalism student. I'm 22. It's time to start working for the ABCs and the ESPNs, and I elope with this desire to get on wax and on stage
Mm.
as much as possible because that's what I need to learn from. And like, whoa, did I do that? Um,
That's a
or
pivot.
yeah, or exiting the school system when I work in the school system. You know, um, through seeing certain revelations, or marriage, or having children. Just these major pivots where it's like, whoop, that's different.
Yep.
When I decided to leave the classroom, or when I decided to live other places,
Mhm.
things that really are just kind of a segment of your story, but can represent really major changes. Like when I say moving away, if you've been in a place for a really long time and you leave it, you have an opportunity to separate yourself from yourself in that context.
Mm.
That is almost like synonymous with you in terms of a day to day existence. So to be
Mhm.
able to separate the two in return is an opportunity to have fresh legs and fresh perspective and really pick up, as opposed to just really being forever immersed in a thing where you don't have those distinctions between self and I guess the greater context. And I
Mm.
think both are important. But
Mhm.
I think in terms of craft and vision and finding ways to be useful for people, what do I do with the word?
Right.
Um, what's my responsibility now? So that I'm continuing to develop, and kind of go out of my way to get where I'm going. I've had one of those type of journeys with all of it. There was always multiple functions at once, and I just feel like the concept of thinking together and learning together
Mm.
is what everything boils down to. So to kind of be seated, in essentially black arts and literature for life is a really interesting space because where we are now, there's almost too much information to keep up with.
Yeah.
But the benefit is the demand to be clear, on where I'm supposed to be,
Mhm.
without that just being lost. And having four bodies and a family responsibility and a family context really demands that I have that focus to the best of my ability, that everything's aligned, to purpose and to the benefit of all four bodies. So that's what I feel like is where I am on all of this journey. Is how does this fit in to every day?
Yeah, that is part of our existence. Um, that we got to measure up to, grow into
Mm-hmm.
that space in the silence. Where
Mm-hmm.
they say blessings reside in quiet spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Learning how to get there for many is a really difficult thing.
Yeah, Bros and Pros is a crazy pivot. I just felt like it was offered at a time where I was like, yeah, that is what I need to do. you know, for at least a year with no previous intention of it. It just shows up, in that synchronous fashion that I was describing. And so
Right.
that's something we got to experience together, but it's like that's a major pivot to where all of a sudden this is a thing where it just wasn't before.
And describe that, because we've all been there. I would hope, for many, it may be large sums of money, and not knowing, never having anything, and not
Hmm.
knowing how to pay taxes or what to do with that. It may come around again. It might not. Um, uh, Describe that, being able to listen, observe, right? Those synchronous moments
Hmm.
in your life, and
I think.
trust them, you know?
Hmm. I think it goes back to what you said about the present. When I asked a question about if we situate ourselves in time and space, how does that connect to healing? And so I think a more patient and observant learner stance in life experience um, offers wisdom and offers clearer choices.
Mhm.
Not perfection, but I can slow down and chew on a thing instead of just going off pure instinct at 100 miles an hour.
Right, right.
Because a younger me would just throw a whole context behind to a new thing.
Oh,
Whereas now I have to respect the context I'm already sitting in. There's no eloping even with the most exciting opportunity.
right.
Now it has to fit.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so I believe that learning that has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hear these guy. I don't know where he is now. Hopefully, he's all right. Jack Ma, billionaire Alibaba. But something he said was interesting. I heard the other day. It was like, in your 40s, right? Do what you do best. Just double down and just do it.
Mm,
50s, you want to invest in the younger folks
okay.
who do it very, very well. Be close to the younger people, right? In your 50s. In the 60s, cultivate, sit on the
Hmm.
in a hammock, that type of thing, enjoy life. But so I'm definitely hearing that. Just both of us are, married men, family guys. I love being a dad. Is um, Some of those levels are definitely embedded in that wisdom that you're talking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So we know Nas, the middle school dropout and big business investor,
Yeah.
and he's been dropping these King's Disease albums, parts
Yes.
1 and 2, with
Love
his
it.
producer Hit Boy. And there's this joint on there, moments we can't relive. You know,
Yep.
those almost become like joints in the structure, you know, of this living experience for me. That's what this conversation is really bringing up for me over and over again. It's
Wow.
just, yeah, like those. It's almost like joints in the body, like an elbow or a wrist or a knee.
Yeah. And how they connect to greater potential articulation. Uh, the best point guard or the best golfer or whatever, right? And
Hmm.
what we're talking about again is this, in this revelatory segment here, is this really ability to, okay, we've got our own signature DNA, but there's levels to it that,
Hmm.
really through practice, right, through getting out of your own way, which is that synchronicity that you're talking about, which, a lot of people can't do. I mean, we call it just, listening to spirit.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's like being co-opted, but it's a real thing. Just like, oh yeah.
it's a real thing.
I think it's a skill too, and yeah.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that album. With the one that just came out, Angela. We've been listening to Nas forever. Our first one, but this one she was like,
Hmm.
and I think that, yeah, we're looking into this, really this breakthrough of dimensions, revelations, and so on, and how you said you do less of the pivoting now at
Hmm.
this stage, and what are you doing more so of in regards to that revelatory capacity when it shows up? How do you now deal with that?
I think. the pivoting has more the process is more like a curve now,
Okay.
or growing a branch, or I don't know how I would describe it now, but it's not so much a major life event
Right.
as it is a great consideration, by way of that divine coordination we talked about, like, oh, you know, hey Tiff, what do you think about, so as opposed to jumping out the window. That's the way I think of it. Being able to assess seasons and assess a greater flow. I mean, once you acknowledge that you can listen to spirit and there is divine coordination, how you gonna not pay attention to it?
No, yeah, yeah. It's yeah. Grandmother's wisdom, all of that is still in play, with everything else.
Hmm.
Wonderful. That channeling is what we're talking about. Even how they did it, and here we are.
Yeah, I love the way that's been kind of the mortar of this whole conversation. I think that's a good sign.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan. Because that's what I was raised by, and herbs and that
Hmm.
type of thing, and knowing how to. Okay, there's an image of a snake before it shows up. If you're around certain plants, and then I don't have to kill it. It's just like they're just checking. I'm in their neighborhood, so let me
Mm.
respect. But get what you need and be on your way, type of thing.
Hmm.
And so that's what I remember, my mom's mom and pop's mom really showing me. And so a lot of that, I think I see you do as well in that, and what you're doing, touching dimensions and so on. Education. Where are you now with the field of education?
Um, Getting closer and closer to this goal of being a part of what I call the Netflix of
Okay.
education, you
Okay.
know. Um, and I'd like to, just have a hand in um, solutions for some of the really predictable and persistent challenges that we face through school systems. I think similar to your blockbuster compared to Netflix,
Hmm.
that there comes a time where acknowledging family and community context first is important, and then considering background, tastes, preferences, history, identity of the end user becomes vital. And instead of charging someone for being late or charging someone for being ahead and not rewound, um, being able to, as humans, employ an algorithm that centers where they actually are, you
Yes.
know, so that when people are, experiencing that healing of being situated, right, and able, it's a process that supports them being in that space that we're describing as really important, having lived some time, you know, on Earth.
Right. Right.
So
Huh.
I'm interested in serving, exactly what keeps coming up in our conversation as that mortar, as yeah, being able to be present and be whole. And I feel it's very important to play a role in that. And I feel like every day that goes by, it's very clear that if you don't really luck up to the right environment or establishment or institution or whatnot,
Mhm.
um, I just think that there's a lot of power in people who are growing every day and are predictably kind of put on the outs of the kind of the standards and the way the game is played. I think that many educators desire to do what's best. I think they have restrictions, like you would have restrictions if you were at Blockbuster and trying to mail out DVDs or do a interactive streaming type of process when that's not really what you're designed to do.
Mm. Mm.
So every stop from the classroom, to Austin ISD to the more nationwide consulting scene for me is like a new component, you know, a new pivot
Uh-huh.
to learning from a different angle what can be. And when you described in your 50s, you um, serve the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the concept of hip hop grew up from the beginning is, how does the hip hop generation leverage its resources for today's generation? And it's funny you name that because with me having a few years left before 50,
Mhm.
I'm laser focused on being able to graduate to that.
Yeah.
And you called it on a dime.
Well, I think we're in flow. We are in an event in this conversation, which is really working to pay it forward
Mm,
and connect with as many people that will hear us,
mm-hmm.
because everyone listening to this plays a role, plays a part in how we all move towards some type of evolution on
Mm,
the planet. Doing our best, like every day, do your best, no matter what you do, and the rest will unfold, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, and so I love that. Gosh, I love that example of Netflix blockbuster.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're talking about a certain level of consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one that's just outdated, punitive, late fees. Come on, right? And another one is more from what and I don't know all the way with Netflix, but at least their model shows to be quite successful for them, is rewarding that exploration, that possibility of a human. And I have to agree with Sadhguru and people like, a human represents a possibility, like a potential, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still your choice, whatever you want to do. And so I love that, Bavu. That's amazing. Going to this final segment here is looking in, and some of that is with that Netflix blockbuster example, which you're sharing, and that graduation that we're talking about is innovation.
Mm-hmm.
With doing this for good, what, 30 years now for you, right? 35 years. I mean, who knows, right?
Mm.
What are some of those innovations, some of them you just mentioned, that you can share? uh, are you seeing that are needed, say, in hip hop
Mm-hmm.
education? Of course, we can't say spirituality because we're doing that ourselves. That evolves
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Yes.
But let's just take hip hop. I mean, it takes care of itself too. But where do you see it going 20 years from now, 10 years from now?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
when I think of futuristic models that we observe,
Hmm.
I think of brother Toby down in Houston, um, as being kind of, you familiar with his work, I'm sure. It feels like a reality show,
Hmm.
through social media, through Instagram, things of that nature. And he doesn't emphasize, hey, buy my album. He's like, go stream that for free. Here's the merch. But look how nice these videos are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Look at my family. Remember when this was my girlfriend? Now we have 3 kids. Now watch us manifest. And so that's something that's really robust, though. I think it becomes harder and harder to simply present an audio track and captivate people's
Right.
attention.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I think basically, and this has always been the case, but now more than ever, really utilizing the ability to give people a story. Um, and I appreciate that hip hop culture, B-boys in the Olympics, I'm listening to Pete Instrumentals 3 today. Just it is so just vast in its offerings, through the podcasts and just all the things that the culture has to offer. It just seems like everything is just more content than you could ever find. And
Yeah.
so the beauty I acknowledge about that is that there's plenty for whatever you're looking for. There's plenty of whatever you're looking for.
Whatever you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, when I say that, hip hop grew up, it's almost bigger than I can describe. I feel like, in
Mm.
a sense, it would be arrogant for me to say where it's going when I'm watching that with you, brother.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's so much content, and
yeah,
it's always been there, right?
yeah.
And now it's like we had to wait until the tech could catch up, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, but in a way, as we were talking about earlier, it is technology
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Which brings me to the point of what's even more valuable and is a little more spiritual,
Yeah.
in its essence, which is the number of decision makers, adults, grandparents, and parents, um, who haven't lived without this cultural force.
Mm, mm.
And I think it's transformed a lot of the way that people think and work and
Yes.
carry themselves. I
Oh
think
yeah.
a lot of the technological information, technological innovation,
Hmm.
I think is informed by a do-it-yourself, something from nothing, create, by any means necessary type of philosophy, and this bold presence of, oh, I can do that too. I feel like what we're seeing, they got that from somewhere.
It's what did Thug say on that Childish Gambino? This is America. He said America. He said he been checking his accounts and he said y'all owe me.
Huh. So then there's that part,
Yeah, yeah,
as far as where it's going. I think that part, I don't see that part ever changing.
yeah. I don't know how. I mean that constant, like, it's there, and it's like it's DNA. It's
Mm.
experience. It's just like the experience unlocks different eras.
Yeah, and there is co-opting and kind of bogus
There's that too.
versions and iterations that exist as well.
Yeah.
But I think when you flip it from, arts and culture to the spirit of a thing, since everything, again, social, political, that produced, or, um, the context of that spirit, it
Mhm,
hasn't changed. It's modernized, but there's still that set slice,
mhm,
um,
mhm,
that I think capitalism demands that. I'm not a, deep political scientist or anything, but
mhm,
that
mhm.
slice is always there.
Yeah.
Um, and now we're in a time with a lot of sort of arguing across political lines and whatever, but things are very stratified nonetheless. And
Yes.
that community still exists even while on a mainstream level. Um, you typically see kind of a bipartisan argument happening, um, in trying to decide what's best for everybody, so to speak. Um, there's still just a unique level, socially, that has to say what it has to say,
Hmm.
and I try to stay in tune to that to the best of my ability, man, because I know what it's worth.
That's right. It's so valuable, invaluable, really, and that uh, black star, black talent star flying, right?
Hmm.
A genius that is well known worldwide
Mm-hmm.
and many dimensions. And so allowing that to flourish is for some very scary, because can you keep up?
Hmm.
You know, that's what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And you put us anywhere on God's green earth, right? It's already there. So that's pretty fascinating. Um, so yeah, this is with the whole era that we're in now. Um, that's really spawned, unlocked, uncovered innovation as well. This current era.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are you seeing with that as well? Humans, music, outside of hip hop, but I mean that's a core element right there. I mean, because commercials everywhere, but outside of that, where else are you seeing that innovation?
Hmm. I think now this sounds. I don't know what this sounds like, but
Hey,
what's coming to mind is permission to speak and permission to assemble. Because virtual, it's a form of communication. And
hmm,
what happens when people get together? It seems like there's a challenge in the renegotiation of that and what qualifies people to get
hmm,
together.
hmm,
But I continue to believe that the assembly is where it's at. And even if we go back to educational ideas, one idea that I'm holding on to is foregoing real estate, like big expensive building and the buses,
hmm, hmm,
and using that for experiences and traveling. Buses and trains and sprinters and planes and Ubers, like get somewhere, um, knowing all the places that are open with AC blowing and Wi-Fi buzzing. Get out there. I don't know too many kids that actually want to sit in the same room every day.
yeah, yeah, that is shifting, isn't it?
Yeah, let's get out of here. Let's get somewhere. There's all of these places where there's a clerk waiting all day for somebody to come in. Let's start assembling in those places.
Hmm,
Stop wasting money and building extra stuff.
hmm, hmm,
Um, so to that degree, and we've heard this said many times, but to that degree, we are the technology. To your point.
yeah. Wow. You know, this conversation is really created to allow others a window and really thoughts that they may be having as well, things that they know and sense,
Hmm.
also to motivate, uh, to keep doing what you're doing, whatever you're doing, do it the best as you can, because that's the vein, the flow that we're on in this conversation here. Um, Babu, as we kind of come to a close here, I'd like to just uh, ask you to give a statement, if you could, for those listening who are doing their best, you know, working through breakthroughs, working to get there, and so on, and then your social stamps and social media, all of that, and what you've got going on, projects, how they can support.
Hmm. All the social stamps are just my name. B as in boy, A as in Adam, V as in Victor, U, Bavu, Blakes, Blakes. Um, yeah, I don't know. My message to people. I feel like we've lined it, laid it out in such detail.
Mm, mm,
I struggle to put a bow on it. Situate yourselves in time and space. Um, let that healing force allow you to be present to where you can honor your existing context while possibly expanding it.
mm,
But to forsake or forego what's in front of you and what you're experiencing now, to deny that um, due to a thirst of something else, it's like ignoring your first 100 or 1,000 supporters because you're not platinum yet. When you have your building blocks, you're looking past them because you don't have a whole building built yet. So yeah, let's start with appreciation and let's go where the love is, and let's have strong belief in what's on the other side of what we're progressing through, struggling to, struggling through, challenged by, um, and keep it as solid as we can
yeah,
with great patience.
yeah.
That's my
Wow.
message.
Thank you for that message. It's my goal with this medium that everyone listening uh, takes this and runs with it, grows with it, becomes so much more than you ever thought. And so just thank you. Uh, it's been a joy speaking with you, brother, being in flow with you. Wow, we should do this more often.
No doubt.
I want to say again, thank you for being a guest on 5 and 6. We look forward to having you back. I would just say to the audience, Thank you for being a part of this experience. Please like, share this video, this work. If you want to learn more or participate in what we've got going on at Bay Acupuncture, go to the link below for our courses, webinars, and projects. And so, to Bavu, just want to say thank you again.
Absolutely. And I thank my sponsor as well, hiphopgrewup.com, Ellesmere. Much love to you,
Amazing.
Dr. Bay.
All right. Until next time.